Good evening and happy Alan Shepard Day. Tonight, a decade and billions later, Lockheed Martin completes the Orion spacecraft for the Artemis 2 crewed moon mission. Inversion completes its first flight of its new reentry vehicle without actually entering. In the meantime, Radian Aerospace has unveiled plans for its own reentry vehicle. Eric Schmidt has grand plans to put data centers in orbit. Are reusable space planes making a comeback? Trump's proposed NASA budget prioritizes Moon-Mars missions over research. This is something we'll discuss, probably hotly. And this is a topic that won't go away for some reason. Who actually gets to be called an astronaut? Plus, a new look and a grand old idea with our guest. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, my name is Thomas Andrew Olson, and this is The Unknown Quantity. Good evening again. As you know, this program is brought to you by the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance. What is the Center? We champion and strengthen emerging space startups, space scalable SMBs, and space adjacent enterprises worldwide through advisory, access, and advocacy across the funding spectrum. Our programs fortify business plans and investor readiness for founding teams at varying levels of development. Now, a lot of our work is supported by listeners and fans, and we thank you in advance for the support that you've given us. Joining me now is one of my podcast producers, entrepreneur, one of my oldest space friends, Michael Lane from Liftport. Michael, great seeing you, and happy Alan Shepard Day.
Hey, how's things?
Oh, they're okay. I've just been busier than hell, but that's how it always goes. I'm still catching up from the Space Symposium. I still got a stack of business cards that I collected, and I've been writing to people, And
it's been weeks, but I mean that's the value of this industry operates on face-to-face and handshakes. It's not like other things. This is a relationships business.
And the whole purpose of going there was to shake the trees. So there we go. That's what I've been doing.
That's great. I have not been going anywhere. It's the nicest day of the year. The hummingbirds are hanging out in my backyard, which is super fun.
That's cool. I already got my this style shirt now for the rest of the summer because it's already starting to be summer. It's only early May. It's getting to be 90 during the day, and
I did a 3-mile walk with my mom today. She's 80 years old, so props to her.
God bless her.
Saw a bunch of seals. I saw 4 bald eagles today, and everybody was just loving the park today. So, it's kind of a calm day for a change. All right.
Cool. All right.
What's going on in the world?
Well, what's going on in the world? How many years have they been working on the Orion spacecraft? And last I checked, which is years ago, they'd already spent $8 billion on it.
Right.
Which is about 10 times more than Elon spent on his entire R&D up to and including the first Dragon capsule of everything, including Falcon 9 and Dragon, the original Dragon, just the stuff that hold cargo. That one they launched in 2012. That's all he'd spent on that. We've already spent 10 times as much on Orion capsule. They're committed to it. They've done it. They might as well use the thing. But my question is the Orion capsule worth 10 times more than everything that Elon did up through 2012?
I am
plated in platinum or something.
I am especially interested in our guest's response to that question. I would like to know the answer to that. So we'll get to that in a minute. But I mean, okay, cool. It's great. And by the way, this picture used to be my background image for about 4 months. I love this image. I love what it stands for. But Yeah, what do you do with it now?
Well, I just think it's a funny thing to notice on that
Mhm.
capsule
Yeah,
that the worm has made a comeback.
yeah,
Remember years ago, I think Mike Griffin
right,
was NASA administrator. He declared war on the worm. He
right,
never wanted to see it again on anything.
yep.
Must
I
be
think that
pouring
came back.
must
I
be
think
pouring himself another shot of Jameson right now, just looking at that.
yeah, right. I think that came back during the first Trump administration.
Yeah.
Um, and it's a callback to nostalgia, right?
Hmm.
It's a callback. So I kind of like it. I kind of dig it, actually. Yeah.
All right.
But
Yeah.
what do we do with Orion? Like, okay, great. It
Yeah.
exists. It happens. There's billions of dollars of sunk costs there. That's cool. What do you do about it, 6 months from now, even 6 years from now, right? Because it was not supposed to be a one and done. But what do you do with it now? Is
Well,
this a
that's how it's
multi?
shaping up to be, though. It's a one and done. The
Yeah.
next Artemis 2 is going around the moon in that thing with people
Mhm.
and not
Right.
land.
Right.
It's not a landing mission. Artemis 3 is supposed to be a landing mission,
Mhm.
and I don't see a plan in place for an Artemis 4, 5, or 6.
Right.
And so maybe it's two and done.
So it's a multi-billion-dollar pair of white elephants.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it looks like to me. That's what it looks like to me.
Oh, economy theorists 100 years from now are going to be writing PhD theses about this stuff. They're not going to believe what we went through in the
Right.
first quarter of the 21st century.
Right. Right. They will be right to be surprised. That's the
Yeah.
right answer. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got? Well, I thought it was just interesting. I don't know much about it, but it's a company called Inversion. They've been
Oh,
building a reentry vehicle, and apparently they actually tested it. They launched the thing and tested it, and then declared the test complete,
hmm
but it never did a reentry.
right.
So I'm presuming it's still
That's
up there somewhere.
it is. Yeah. So that's kind of par for the course. Um, if something gets to space at all, the CEO is obligated to say it's a success. And
Right.
in some levels, it really is, right? Because getting there in the first place is hard. But it does kind of beg the question of what happens next. And it's going to be there for years. It's
Yeah.
500 kilometers up,
No, that's a
and
lot. Yeah.
it's looking at, I don't know where the number is, but it's looking at being there for years before it re-enters. Um,
Hmm.
I was really pretty sure it was had it in there.
Well,
Maybe I saw it somewhere else.
maybe they can hire our buddies from a couple weeks ago to
Yeah,
go and bring it down for
right,
and
right.
nudge it, back.
Yep.
Um,
I think this is really interesting, and it actually goes side by side with Radian, who is also building a reusable vehicle.
is
Between
there a
them,
sweepstakes going on?
well, I was just about to say, I talk about my grand architecture and developing the solar system, and how we've mastered rockets and satellites, and then the next step is space stations, and the next step is the moon, and then eventually Mars. Somewhere along the way, I kind of missed the re-entry element, and it was Dr. Greg Autry who kind of clued me in on that maybe about 4 years ago. He was really early on that. And now, between these two articles, it references uh, five re-entry vehicles. This one's
Okay.
based in Seattle, so I'm definitely interested in what they're doing locally, because that's my next door neighbors. But yeah, there's Radian, Inversion, um, Varda is number 3, Atmos is number 4, and Exploration Company number 5. That is 5. By the way, theirs is named Nix. Sean, our
Mhm.
producer, wants to know that. There's 5 reentry vehicles between these two re-entry companies, capsules between these these two articles.
Who do they think their customers are?
Well, they are all betting literal billions, because 160 million here. The other article has another number similar to that. Pretty soon they're talking about real money. There's a $500 million invested into this technology between the 5 companies.
Okay. Well, they all think there's a market for that somewhere, a market demand.
Yeah.
For whatever they're carrying, how big a load it can carry, that probably varies as well.
Yeah.
And so
they're all bidding. It's
where are these loads coming from, and who's paying for it is my question.
Yeah, right now, Varda is probably the farthest along, and they're focusing on drug discovery. They think they've got a biotech result coming.
Okay.
And there are some companies working on, it's called ISAM, in space assembly and manufacturing.
Okay.
And I mean, there's actual organizations focused around ISAM. So, curiously, the International Space Station's CASIS group, that's the U.S. lab that runs our portion of the space station. They're meeting in Seattle later this summer, and they're going to be talking all about biotech. So I don't see it. It seems really early to me, but I'm building an elevator on the moon. So what do I know?
Hey, who am I to say anything? I build a lunar elevator.
Right. Yeah. I
go UFO hunting on the weekends. So there you are.
There you are. Now we know the real reason by how you end your calls every day.
Keep watching that. That's right.
Keep watching that. Yeah.
They're out there. They're out there.
All right. What else we got today?
Okay. Apparently a while back, Eric Schmidt, who actually more or less stole the idea for Android from Steve Jobs when he was on Apple's board, then went right to Alphabet and said, okay, we can build something like that. And that's how you ended up with Android. And now they got half the market. Steve's dead. He doesn't care. But he got himself very rich, and now he's not on Alphabet's board anymore, I guess. But he bought this company a while back called Relativity Space. And now I guess his big plan is to put data centers in orbit. I guess, is this a build it and they will come kind of option? I haven't heard of a big market demand for data centers in orbit yet. Unless he contends for his customers to be government customers, NASA, DOD, ESA, probably not Roscosmos.
I think it's more than that. Because Seattle is kind of a hotbed for, they call it the Space Data Corridor. It's the connection that basically loops around Seattle. It's the freeway's 405. Off the I-5, and they call it the Space Data Corridor because that's where SpaceX builds all of their satellites, and Amazon's Kuiper builds all of theirs. And there's a lot of space companies here in this region, and one of the biggest in the field is a company called StarCloud. I know Philip a little bit, and they've got $25 million to build data centers on orbit. So, I mean, they're definitely doing something.
Yeah, well, according to the idea that they're getting from this thing, apparently Schmidt was on before the House Committee on Energy and Commerce last month. He spoke on the future of AI and U.S. competitiveness. But then he raised the idea that we're going to need a lot more electricity, both renewable and non, to power the data centers that will facilitate AI. He noted an average nuclear power plant generates 1 gigawatt of power. People right now are planning 10 gigawatt data centers.
Yeah.
Where are they going to get the power? I think his idea is he wants to put data centers in space to use space solar power to power them, and and to be able to dump the excess heat more quickly, and that takes pressure off the grid.
I'm buying the logic. I do. I am a new convert to using AI, but I've been using it constantly for about the last 6 weeks, and I can kind of see what they're talking about. I'm a little late to the table, but that, if you multiply me times a whole lot of other me's, they're kind of moving towards this adoption of this technology.
I'm going there too.
I
This old man,
kind
he's
of
going
see
there
what
too,
they're talking about
because I have no choice. There's so many balls I have in the air right now. So much stuff I have to do just at the center alone, let alone my day job.
Right.
It's like I need an AI to do every scrap of scut work that I have sitting out there, so I don't have to do it anymore, and I can focus on certain key things where I'm best at.
So if you're Eric Schmidt and you're sitting on $20 billion, which is only 10%,
yeah,
right. If you're sitting on $20 billion, you're like, all right, I'm not quite ready to retire. What's my last thing? What's the last big thing I'm going to do? Relativity was in trouble. It's been in trouble for a while. The guy who ran it tried to take it. They took it public. That was kind of a disaster. And so he tried pulling it back privately. So it's definitely been a bit sketchy as a company.
But if they ever had succeeded, it was supposed to be able to carry 33.5 metric tons to orbit in expendable mode and 23.5 in reusable mode. Yep. And so that's if you can pull it off, that's a contender.
Yeah, no. So you're like, okay, I'm Eric Schmidt. I got $20 billion in my checking account. What's interesting enough to get my attention? Space. What's going to use my capital? Space and rocketry launch. And then what do I know that other people don't know? Data centers they just consume energy.
Yeah.
So it does kind of make some sense. Like I think he might be onto something, and it would be really interesting if Schmidt was in the game alongside Bezos and Musk. I think that our friend Tomlinson refers to them as the billionaire cavalry.
Yep.
Schmidt came in, rescued a company that had good tech, but didn't have a business and hadn't finished their tech. Billionaire cavalry. I think that is a
they didn't exist when we got started, and everybody had great new ideas, none of which had traction, none of which would have got funding. I like to think we did something about that. So
yes, sir. Absolutely.
And I'm still doing it until they find me slumped over at the desk, I guess. But
yeah, for sure. All right, a couple more. What do you got here?
Well, reusable space planes, supposedly, according to Space News, are making a comeback. What that means, I don't know. It would be a boon, of course, for all those spaceports that they built out that were built for horizontal launch and landing. And right now, the current players are all vertical launch and landing. So there's a lot of empty spaceports out there they built with other people's money that would probably applaud at this idea.
Yep.
And I always thought Dream Chaser was a cool concept. I'd like to at least see that fly.
They've put so much into it. That's another one. By the way, that's another billionaire cavalry that doesn't get a lot of attention.
Yeah.
His name is Cam G. I can't remember what his last name is. Starts with a G. But that's another billionaire cavalry that came in and trying to build Sierra Space. So good on them for that. I don't have any negative thoughts towards a space plane. I do feel kind of like its time came and went, so that the time to build that was a while ago. But given what we just learned about reusable down mass, right? Having Radiant and Inversion and the other three companies I just talked about, I almost want to put them in the classification as a re-entry vehicle.
Yeah.
Right. Like it makes more sense if it's a re-entry vehicle. I'm like, oh, all right. So I'm gonna count that as 5.5 re-entry vehicles. That's how I kind of look at it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that India had a re-entry vehicle. I had no idea that was even that even existed. So this was news to me.
Right. Right.
All right, what do we got?
Next up, we can touch on this. Trump formally submitted, a NASA budget last Friday, and it puts crewed missions to Moon and Mars front and center. It would overhaul SLS and Orion, which means, probably phasing it out over time, eliminating Gateway entirely. I'm not going to shed a tear over that. But here's the interesting thing, and here's the reasoning for it. It would also cancel the Mars sample return mission. And they're arguing that the effort's now unnecessary since those goals will be achieved by direct human missions to Mars far sooner than we'd originally planned them.
They're going to walk over with their spacesuits and pick them up. Yeah. I'm not sure I buy that, but okay. I'm just going to point out this graphic, obviously AI generated. It's a Chinese flag with Russian Cyrillic writing on the backpack. That also looks surprisingly like SpaceX, right? So robots, all our talk about AI, they're still deeply flawed. Anyway, I just found the graphic kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't. This kills me. A 25% cut, 24.3. I cannot wrap my brain around how you rationalize that.
Yeah.
And
again,
like a lot of people are.
And I've been ranting on and on about this on LinkedIn and anywhere else people will listen. This is why are we wasting so much time picking NASA to pieces when you could cut the defense budget literally in half and still have 5 times the military of the next 5 countries combined. It's
right.
And we'd be fine. And you have some money to pay down the national debt. You do all sorts of stuff, but or beef up other programs while, taking away other ones. I mean, why pick on NASA? They're the only bang for your buck agency that we have.
It's at the level. My friend Pierre Garretson refers to it as budget dust. That out of $1 trillion DoD budget, the $25 billion that NASA asks for is at the stage of budget dust. And what's crazy is there's a second appropriation that's being considered in Congress where that billion would get an additional $150 million that some congressmen and senators are pushing for. It's a boggling amount of money. And I'm a big believer in the R&D that the Defense Department does. I'm a big supporter of the R&D that the Defense Department does, but they cut 25% of one of the smallest useful agencies in the nation.
Absolutely.
And that
has been paying dividends to the American people for decades. It's a tragedy. It's an absolute tragedy. We're opposite sides of the fence. We sure as hell agree on this. It's absolute nonsense.
Yeah. We're on opposite sides of the fence, but we agree on this. I do like this final quote from the Planetary Society, right? Cutting it without the input, without a confirmed NASA administrator or response to a considered policy won't make the agency more efficient. It will cause chaos, waste taxpayer investment, and undermine American leadership
And he
in
has
space.
a point, because now look at poor Jared Isaacman. Now he's going to be confirmed by the
Right?
full Senate. He's going to show up his first day at work. Hey, welcome to your new job. We just cut your budget 25%. No,
Yeah,
keep doing what you said you were going to do, though.
Right. Yeah. Everything's going to be
Yeah,
fine.
trust us.
Yeah. So.
And the final thing before we move on, I want to. There's a thing. You just leave the link here. We don't have to talk about it even. Just leave it there for readers.
Right.
There's this. They're just doing another op-ed type of piece and trying to figure out. And there's still a debate going on now because of this. This fluff fight, which is who gets to be called an astronaut anyway. And I don't know why we even need to raise that question. Mike Mealing was posting this. I like to see that word retired in about 10 years. And I said, yes, by the way, you're absolutely right, because no one in Starfleet is called an astronaut. So no one's called that. So we're gonna, we're gonna get away from that someday. We might as well start now.
Yep.
So.
Yep, I think it's peculiar. I don't have a whole lot more to say about it. It's hard to see this image right here in the corner, on the top left-hand corner. That's Dennis Tito. I used to refer to that as the Tito effect, because he's the first paid, I'm going to say tourist, although people don't like that phrase. He's the first paid astronaut. If you don't count the two contract astronauts that Walt Anderson put into the sky for Mir. Right.
And another thing, and that picture in the bottom left is also that's the X-Corps space plane that got mostly constructed but never actually flew.
The top right is Bigelow Aerospace, was fully constructed. This version didn't fly. But two versions did fly. And then the bottom right is Spaceship One and White Knight. That was the dawn of, I consider it the dawn of the new age of space, the golden age of space. Okay. So I actually like this this image, this graphic quite a bit. So
okay, we're moving on. Moving on, because I want to get to our guest.
Let's go ahead.
This is an interesting young man who has, as I teased earlier, a new take on an old idea, as Michael well understands. Morty Friedman is with us tonight. He's the CEO of Etheria Space and Etheria Graphene, and we're going to learn a little more about that. But he has a lot of interesting new ideas, and we want to hear from him tonight. Morty, a little late, but thanks for sticking with us. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Since your biographical details were a little thin on the ground, I wonder if you could fill me in a little bit on your background and what these companies do, and then we'll get into your big idea.
Yeah. So essentially, a little about my background. I had first of all, a huge fan of the show, so thank you for having me. But grew up a little non-traditional educational background, grew up in a very religious family, so didn't really, I guess college or university type of life really wasn't something that would have fit in or really made sense. So I left home at around 18, started working at a chicken restaurant, started managing that. Eventually a position opened up and I was able to get into the financial side of business. And worked and still do work part-time as the CFO of a real estate management company to keep everything going. Space has always been a passion. I've been working on projects for a while in the space field, specifically with Etheria and the space elevator. I was working on that for a few years, but kind of never really saw a way for me to get into it or any kind of direction like that until I picked up a side hustle of selling insurance, and then kind of had conversations with people, and it just kind of made sense. Like, why don't you at least go for it? Connect with people, try to do it, and give it a real effort. So, one thing leads to the next, and here we are. A year and a half later of just connecting, reaching out, building an industry around something that I'm passionate about, over something that you're just doing. So yeah, that's, I guess, a rough background of where I'm from. Now, Etheria as a company or as a brand is building the space elevator. Now, what does that mean? So the space elevator itself is a concept. I'm not gonna, get into that in a little bit. I'll show you the slides. But the doing it is something that's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot of time, a lot of effort from a lot of different things, and some of it's going to require breakthroughs or real significant advancement. So over this longer term project, over this bigger thing, the Etheria brand or company is kind of going to build on itself, build one thing to the next, to eventually end up with a functional space elevator on Earth. The brand as a whole is trying to enable permanent and continuous access to space for Earth, something that rockets just won't be able to do. But the mission to do it and the way to get there will include a lot of advancement and a lot of or multiple different incredible technologies and things like that, right? With the tether mechanics, or currently we're working on something called the space elevator games. I mentioned to you, let me actually share the pitch deck for that so I can explain that in more detail.
While you're doing that, I'm going to toss in. I only met Morty because of this show. Candidly, he. Oh, do we have to do something? Add to scene.
Enable it, yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, great. I kind of love the graphic, by the way. This is the first time I've seen it. It's kind of similar to another graphic that I used to use. So I'm just going to tell the audience for a second as a disclaimer. I only met Morty through this show. He had reached out to me prior to that, but I often ignore fan mail from people. Because I just don't have time to answer all this stuff. Everybody here knows my history. I was one of the first space elevator proponents all the way back in 2001, 2, and 3, working with the NASA Institute for Advanced Concepts team. And then my first version of Liftport, 2003, 4, 5, 6, and 7, focused on material sciences and robotics for the space elevator. So when I met Morty, I was kind of surprised and shocked that his model was pretty similar to my model. But I stopped working on this a long time ago. I stopped working on the elevator back in 2000, or the Earth elevator back in 2010 or so. And that's when I started focusing on the lunar system. So even though I have, a lot of interest in what Morty's doing, I'm not working on that. So I'm fascinated by this. All right, go ahead. I didn't want to take up your time. Just a little bit of preamble.
Thank you. Yeah. So again, like you're saying, the space elevator is a concept that needs a lot of time, needs a lot of people. What we're focusing on now, and the first real push to the area is to make something called the space elevator games. Etheria, in general, is on a mission to transform space transport into reliable, cost-effective, and eco-friendly highway to the stars by building a bridge to space to replace the inefficiencies of traditional rockets and enable humanity's next great era of advancement. The challenge with rockets is, number one, is the cost, right? Rockets inherently are expensive to make, which makes space prohibitive for most projects. Rockets are inefficient, right? Most of a rocket's mass is the fuel, again, leading a lot to the cost as well. The reliability of rockets do rely very heavily on launch windows and things like that. And the environmental impact of rockets is something we're just getting aware of, but also will grow with more rocket use. And scalability, that's that. The real killer on rockets essentially is the scalability. Rockets are always going to be limited by the rocket equation, which generally means that the more we want to send up, the more we need to send up and burn and use up in the process, which leads to everything else, makes it more expensive, it makes it less reliable, things like that. So a space elevator, for those that know, is just a much more cost-effective, efficient, and reliable system. It's also scalable in a way that rockets can never be. By no means am I saying we shouldn't keep using rockets. Rockets are this incredible means to access space, but we do need rough infrastructure if we are going to have a space Earth economy. We do need that, the shipping routes and the highway systems, right? We need the rough infrastructure to send lots of mass back and forth in a consistent way. But besides the space elevator, or putting the actual building the space elevator aside, competition in general fuels progress, and it sparks creativity and problem solving and helps us push limits on things that we thought were impossible. So what we're trying to do with the space elevator games is using the space elevator as a catalyst to accelerate development and advance material sciences, robotics, power beaming, tether mechanics, and many other space elevator technologies that both need to be advanced to build a space elevator, but also have tons of spin-off technologies and spin-off uses in our current world. A little bit of history of the space elevator games in the past. The space elevator games were held in the USA from 2005 to 2009 as part of the NASA Centennial Challenges, largely funded by NASA, and they had the ability to run. After that, in 2009, JCTech started in Japan, hosting annual competitions there, running that. And then WAR in Germany, also again, has had some competitions since then and continued to host competitions. So what we're trying to do with the space elevator games is revive the competition in the US as an international effort to unite all the researchers on this and advance the research of the space elevator and the necessary technologies, as well as raise awareness for this concept. Our competition implementation timeline, what we're focusing on now is this year 1, we're trying to launch with demonstration events. We aim to showcase the space elevator and technologies and attract initial awareness, teams, and sponsors. We're going to be having a table at the ISDC and other potential space events and news. In year 2 is where we plan on actually launching the space elevator games, having our first competition. The focus will be to learn from that game and allow for the success of the continuation of this competition. And then in year 3 on, we're going to keep driving the competition and allowing for more competition categories to enter, and also ultimately to keep advancing the necessary technologies to eventually lead to the space elevator. We're looking for strategic partnerships, which are crucial to building anything like this. Collaboration allows us to leverage the expertise and share the resources and accelerate this progress. So we're looking to collaborate with universities, research institutions, industry sponsors, and space agencies. We're currently working together with the JSC in Japan, ISEC in the United States and International, Space Elevator Consortium, WAR in Germany, and Etheria. The Space Elevator Games will drive innovation and inspire the next generation. We invite you to explore how your organization can partner with us to make this vision a reality, and how you can help us pave the highway to the stars. So, thank you. And essentially, the Space Elevator Games are something beyond just the space elevator, right? They're aiming to be able to function on its own and advance all these necessary technologies and keep functioning, regardless of if the space elevator ever becomes a reality. So I think that's definitely key, and that's as a catalyst and as something that can, if it doesn't happen, there'll always be stuff to work for to make it happen. So it'll be able to keep going, and we'll be able to keep advancing that. So that's where we are right now. That's a rough concept of Etheria and our current specific project.
Okay, I got some. Well, the first thing that jumps off the presentation is there's no mention of money. What kind of budget are you looking for during these phases to make things a reality? You're probably going to want like corporate sponsors and other public sponsors, universities, stuff like that. You got to put numbers on those things, unfortunately. So what kind of and if you don't know what those numbers are, right now, I'll let you off the hook. Start thinking about those and putting them in.
Yes, we do have a full budget plan that is being worked on. We are looking at around $500,000 to host the games. on a annual basis. But again, that'll start, and that's the first year of the games. Again, it'll also generate a lot of revenue, being that it's the games, and will start breaking even and turning profitable at around year 4. But again, it's functioning on its own. We're also looking to, I mean, this is going to be a non-profit. It's not a for-profit business. It's a non-profit organization that's going to run and host these science competitions to advance. So it's just a little bit different in terms of budgeting on how you budget that. But again, it's also going to be running profit and running again, on its own.
Well, there are nonprofits out there that make $1 billion a year. Not us, of course, but there are some that do that. I saw the thing I thought interesting with the climber competition. I guess they're doing something in Japan. I went to a climber competition long ago. I mean, it was I think, Michael, you were there too. It was the second X Prize Cup in 2006 in New Mexico. And there was a climber competition. I remember one of them going up there and they're starting to smoke. And there was some other thing. They're trying to shine something through a mirror at the thing to give it more light. And there's this guy standing next to me. He looks at that and points to this, see, smoke and mirrors. It kind of said it all, you know. But it was loads of fun. I still have the hat, X Prize Cup hat.
Do you remember that? Yeah. Neil deGrasse Tyson was at those games, and he did part of a documentary on. He was doing his show there.
Yeah, Chuck Flowers showed up with his rocket plane. Remember the Learjet they were going to convert?
Yep. Yeah, I actually loved those games. Those were super fun. Would have been 2006, maybe?
Yeah. 2006 maybe? Yep.
Yeah. Tom Nugent and Dr. Jordan Kerr. Tom used to work for me, and Kerr was an advisor. And they came to me afterwards, and they're like, "We can beat those guys." And I'm like, because he was watching what they were doing, and Dr. Kerr was a PhD in light and energy and lasers. He was a part of the original Star Wars program for Reagan, and he really did know lasers and energy. And he's like, "We can beat those guys." And I was a judge and a rule creator for the games, and I'm like, I have to recuse myself. I can't do this. And they're like, "Can we leave Liftport and go do our own thing?" And I'm like, "Yeah, peace out. Go do that." And they did. They actually, that's the team that won the $900,000 a couple years later. So hats off to those kids. Kids, they're all 40s now. Yeah. He was not a kid. Right. Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about the games. All right. What have you and I have talked about some of the traction. What do you think that looks like? Fast forward, put your crystal ball out there and say, this is what we're going to do by when and what.
Yeah. So
what's it going to look
like? The goal is, and this what we're trying to have is, basically the first year is really looking to be one-on-one kind of, a few teams from Japan, a few teams which, already exist, a few teams from Europe that currently do exist. We're going to build a few US teams. We're looking for around maybe 20, 25 initial competing teams in that first competition. That'll grow, right? Yeah. And then from there, the plan is as it grows, we'll be able to introduce regionals and things like that to then, grow the competition everywhere that it's being held. But that's our estimate. And that's, I think, a realistic number for year 1, year 2, or not year 2, but year 2, we should double or triple. But that's the, in terms of traction.
I think that's really cool. What's going to be different about the German program and the Japanese program that we're going to kind of claim as the American program? What are you going to do differently from those two groups?
So I think number one is this is different than just a previously space elevator competition has just been a climber competition. we're starting out with a climber competition, but our goal is not just to have a climber competition. It's to have many science competitions to lead to the space elevator technology. Also learning from everyone else's, what they did right, what they did wrong, will be the way we can get it done in the best way possible. But I guess the main focus of the current space elevator games is this is collaborative. This is taking the good that everyone has, bringing it all together, and then having one global competition for the world. Again, hosted in the US, but it'll be a global competition. That's
Nice. Yeah. You've got a couple comments in the chat. I'm just going to read them off here. One, Sawyer's talking about glad to see the games are continuing. Hadn't heard of much since they were held in the aughts. And then Joe Luttrell, that we've had on the show before. Interesting to see the Space Elevator games making a comeback. Look forward to see where it goes. We all look forward to see where it goes, right? I want to point out a comment that you made that's actually pretty near and dear to my heart. It doesn't matter whether the elevator works or not. You think it will. I think it won't. It doesn't matter whether it does or not, because as a catalyst to spark the imagination, as a catalyst to do hard research, it's worthwhile. And I don't know if I ever told you this, but Freeman Dyson, and I had an email exchange many years ago before he died. And he is like, I don't think it can be built, but I think you should try anyway. And that's kind of what I feel like about whenever I talk to you. Like, I think you should try it anyway, even though I've got some skepticism, right? So I want to encourage that the effort is worth the effort.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the way I see it, and the way I see space elevator, is it's an eventuality. Like whether we directly work to create the material strong enough and the need for space access at that kind of level in the near future, or we wait and eventually stumble on material strong enough and have so much mass going to space, or if there's such an easy way to send mass to space where it just becomes something that someone's going to do. But again, that could take a very long time. Right? We have this opportunity now to push this technology to try to essentially intentionally create a catalyst to advance space in general all over the place, right? It's we can intentionally go and create the iPhone, right, or the smartphone. Go, from being something that has access, we could get there. It may take a long time, to making it something that we can rapidly advance, rapidly test, and really basically the space elevator starts where rockets kind of are now, 60 years after they began. Right. So, and then this is the space elevator at its roughest concept, right? That'll also advance, and I'm sure over time the space elevator will become more, more efficient, more reliable. So again, yes, whether the space elevator happens in our lifetime or not, ultimately doesn't matter. The technology needed for it, or it doesn't matter. It's not the goal, right? The technology that we need to get there is really, really going to advance our world in so many different ways beyond that. And that's kind of the idea of making sure we invest the time in the research and especially the creativity. And that's one thing competition has over a company or a business that has a single, profiting goal. Is competition inspires creativity. It gets people to think of something new, think of a different way to tackle this problem, or a more efficient way to tackle this problem, or whatever it is. And that's, really what we want with the space elevator games, right? The space elevator is a great idea, but can you think of something even better, or a way to do it even better than anyone has done it before? That's what to get out of the games in the long term.
What do you say to people about the materials? Because because of the work that Edwards and I did, and Brian Lobsher and Pete Swan and Ted and a bunch of other folks, most people know that the tether. Most people know that the elevator works on a physics level, on the physics and engineering level. They understand that it works because it does, right? What do you say to people when they ask about the tether? Because in the same way that we promoted the idea, people also know that the tether isn't there yet. So what's the answer there, and what is the theory you're trying to do about that?
So okay, the first thing is, whenever someone would say something is impossible, or they've so far always been proven wrong at some point. At the end of the day, we will get there. We will figure that out. The question is, how do we do it? And if it's something that's feasible in a certain amount of time, right? So our focus with the technology is we need to create enough of a reason for people to create these stuff. But at the end of the day, we're waiting a little bit on either a breakthrough or some really big advancement. So our focus with ethereographing, which I haven't really spoken much about, is focusing more on the production methods, focusing on the way to manufacture these materials that we already have, that we already have ways to manufacture. We just need to, we can't work for a breakthrough, but we could work for engineering, right? We could over-engineer stuff and keep engineering past further points. So our goal is to engineer the manufacturing process for these advanced materials to being at a level that we can potentially see it being produced at a level to be used for a space elevator, which on the same side also allows us to enter a market that currently doesn't really have high volume of production, just because of the difficulty with that. So that's the profitability point now in researching for this bigger technology.
I think the materials, honestly, you can make freight cars full of money on the materials, and never move the elevator an inch, and it's still worth the effort. So
that is something that I wanted to bring up, because it is a huge thing. You're a young guy, you're just getting started, and sure, probably you've been asked this before. It's perceived still as being an almost impossible project, and you're not getting, and no one's gotten real traction with it, and you're thinking you're just getting started. Is it too much to take on right away? Because some people might say, you're going to hurt your career before you even get off the ground doing something like that right out the gate. Because it could be a generational project. You may be on the verge of the 22nd century, and I know you'll still be here, because 21st century medicine in the second half is going to be, they're going to make you healthy. You'll be healthy as hell. You'll be fine. So you'll live to see it. But is that something you're going to commit to an entire life, maybe devoted to this thing before you achieve it?
Yeah. So that's, again, there's obviously two ways to look at being at this point in my career, and doing something like this. Obviously, the hard part about doing it at this point is there's no credibility yet, right? I don't have any, or at least enough credibility built up on past work. But at the same time, and doing something like this, right, you're going to get laughed out of the room anyway. That's just the way it is. You're going to have that all the time. But I look at it as an advantage, right? Because the fact that I don't, that I'm building into something like this allows me to grow from everyone around me. And it kind of allows me to know what I don't know, which is a lot, and then be able to infer with the people who do know everything, or who do have the knowledges, and then really work from more of an open perspective of how these things get done, more than someone who's already built up and knows, okay, this is how I'm going to do it. This is exactly, what I know. So that's definitely, I see that as an advantage, being able to do this. Another big thing, right? Like you said, it's a generation project, and yes, an advantage is that, yes, I can see it from beginning to end and really man the entire thing, or be the one to do that. So yeah, definitely committing to this, definitely committed to this. I've been working on it for a while. And like I said, it's a passion. It's something that my core driver at the end of the day is to make a difference and to really, really help the world on a large scale. And right, whether some people say this is impossible or not, we can't know that now. There's going to be a lot of things that happen, a lot of things that we'll discover. What at the end of the day, my career will be my career. It'll have a lot of stuff, and the goal is for it to lead to something this big and this grand. But in it, just a little bit of a personal perspective, even if this doesn't end up happening like this, right? Like you're saying, in terms of a career, there's a lot of other industry that I'm definitely going to be growing and advancing just by trying and just by doing this. So definitely in it for the long run, definitely committing to this. And like you said, it's going to lead to, yeah.
I want to point out something that you just kind of like glossed over here. I think it's really important. People might say it's impossible, but we can't know that now, right? That should be your tagline. So my tagline was, there's a profound difference between difficult, very, very hard, and impossible. So that's what I built my reputation on. And you can build your reputation on, people might say it's impossible, but we can't know that now. You should write that down, put it on a t-shirt. That's part of your branding.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. It's interesting here to hear this conversation between you guys, because talks about a space elevator have been going on for maybe 60 years. I think Arthur Clarke started with this and proposed it in articles and even in a sci-fi novel that he wrote. 30 years later, Kim Stanley Robinson picked up on the idea in his book Green Mars. And there was actually, they had a long running. It was a giant cable. But it was a long-running thing to go to Mars, and really building up the planet, and turning it green, and terraforming it. And but then in between, of course, there were social conflicts going on, and a war broke out between factions, and somebody severed the moorings of the cable. And guess what happened? And he described it in such vivid detail, you could believe this. It started wrapped around the equator of Mars 2.5 times. Imagine the damage that it did in its path all the way around there. The human tragedy and destruction was just incredible. So that's the dark side of the space elevator.
We got Stan Robinson to write a chapter in our book, because the number one question when Edwards and I were first starting out, the number one question, because 2011 happened. 9/11 happened in 2001. Everybody asked if a plane was going to fly into it. That was the number one question. And then the number two question was, what if it falls and wraps around the planet? And that was a Stan Robinson question. So we got Robinson to write a chapter in our book saying, the math was good, but that's not relevant to an Earth elevator. We're going to do things different. It was actually pretty cool of him to do that. But that's the number one question. Number two question.
Okay, we're getting close to ending time here, Morty. Anything special, pithy, profound you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Just one of the big things with the space elevator games, just as a focus now, is we do need to work on public perception. You're saying, Tom, about the space elevator in general, and that's something that will take a long time. That's as part of the theory of project is not just the businesses themselves that will get built up; it's also the longer term, legislative and public perception of this. So yes, if you're watching this now, and anything, the space elevator is really something that can change the world, but we need the world to see that, and that's a big part of that. So. Yeah, definitely. If you have any, interested in joining the games or helping out with the games in any way, reach out to me. We will have a website out soon, hopefully. So that's good there. But otherwise, yeah.
On that, Morty Friedman, potentially heir apparent to the Lane dynasty. Thank you so much for being on this program. It's been very enlightening. We're going to see you again a lot, I know.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right, guys. Coming up next week in another of our series of space consultants, we have Jonathan Stroud, a space marketing pro with a focus on space tech founders and AI. He has built sales funnels for his clients that has made his clients millions and millions of dollars. And so I want to hear how he does it coming this Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. From the news desk at the Center for Space Commerce and Finance, this is Thomas Andrew Olson. Keep watching the skies.